Hello, and welcome to Parenting Differently, where we leave behind the old way of parenting and allow the gifts of motherhood, fatherhood, parenting to raise us. Different to perhaps how society is telling us to raise our children, maybe different to how you were raised, and maybe even different to how you expected you'd be raising your kids, just different. I'm your host, Anja Simmons. Welcome. I'm a speaker and author, parenting coach. As an author of my book coming out in the fall, Parent from This Place, How Yoga Changed the Way I Parented. So look for any links on that if that's of interest to you. I'm a mum, a yogi, and I came to parenting thinking it would be pretty straightforward, pretty easy, having raised many other people's children. And I was in for a shock when it actually wasn't. There was no timeout card where you could kind of click and leave for the evening. And in the midst and the muddle of parenting, I realized that we were actually being raised together. That it was me in self-realization and healing. And that then allowed me to lean back and allow my kids to be who they are, who they authentically are in this world. And it's an ongoing process. Mine are big now. And it's an exciting place to be as I realize we really do need to change the way we're parenting in order to change the world. So I'd like to welcome you to our first guest for season 4. Can't believe it's season 4 we're going into. Teronie Donaldson. He's an entrepreneur, a writer, a motivator, content coach, and a reading habits coach, which is fantastic. So welcome, Teronie. Very happy to have you here.
Awesome to be here. I really appreciate it, Anja.
Oh, wonderful. So let's dive in. First question, who are you and who are you parenting?
So I'll start with my kids who I'm parenting. I have 3 kids,
Mm-hmm.
a 13-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 3-year-old. Boy, girl, boy. Good sandwich. And for me, it's hard to define who I am because I'm at the stage I'm still learning who I am. Even though I am an entrepreneur, reading habits coach, etc., those are great titles. The best thing that I could say that I'm happy with being is being a husband of 16 plus years
Brilliant.
and a dad of 3 kids. So those are my biggest achievements, and everything else is, extra bonus. And I'm still learning.
Yeah, fully understand that. Fully understand it. I think my kids are older. I have, forget what they are. I have a 20-year-old, and who are these children living in this house? A 20-year-old and a 23-year-old.
Oh, wow.
And
Nice.
yeah, it's very different kind of parenting. But
Yeah.
I think we're under this myth that we just once you know, and that's it. You're sorted. Like you pick your career and that's it, and you do this. So I love that what you're saying about it. It's like I'm just learning. I'm still learning. I'm still evolving.
Absolutely. There's way too much to learn, and I try to keep that with, I guess, my philosophy of parenting.
Hmm.
So, because again, it's not in co. I'm still learning as I'm going,
Hmm.
and there's so much to learn. You can't be
Yeah.
stuck in the ways that let's say my parents would have taught me.
Hmm.
Sometimes that doesn't apply with them.
Right. Right. Very much so. So, kind of touching on the next question I had for you, sort of what are you uncovering about yourself through your children? What are they showing to you, or what have they raised you for?
Ooh, that's a very good question. Um, that's a very good question because that's the type of question that the answers can change at any time.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. So I should say in this moment.
in this moment,
Yeah.
this moment they're uncovering for me like their personalities, how each of them are different, and how it's kind of reflecting back to me is I see myself in each one at different times. Just when I think one kid is more like how I am or
Right.
how my wife is, then
Hmm.
I say, oh, I remember that. Just little things.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I would say in that way if I answered that correctly.
Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. And sort of how would you describe your parenting style? And adding in there from when you first thought you became a parent, like with your wife and how the plan was, and then actually what it's like.
Okay. So my parenting style, it's ever evolving. However, I'm more laid back, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak. Unless we have to go somewhere, then I'm on. I'm like, we if we need to go, we need to go. Like if we have to
Right.
go out, I'm
Yeah,
telling
yeah,
you
yeah.
12 million times to get your clothes or do everything, then I'm more.
Right.
But however, as far as Russian, not
Yeah,
anything
yeah.
else.
I didn't think that was punching.
No. You never know. You never know. Different
That's true.
interpretations
Let's
nowadays. You
cover that.
never know.
Yeah.
No, but I'm more laid back and I'm learning and more observant as we're going along in this parent journey. So I would say that way. And then compared to how I thought we have these models of before we become parents, we have these models of it should be like this or it should be like that, but it's just, everybody's different.
Yeah, so much so. And I think that where I can relate to that is this idea that as we learn, like when you see aspects in them that even that you're like, I don't like that. Why are they so grabby or why are they being so unkind? It's always a reflection back on me, right?
Yeah.
And like, oh, okay, where have I been a bit little grabby? Like I noticed I'll sort of would have taken something from their hand and then I'm going, listen, guys, we don't snatch. And it's like, well, what did I just do?
Yeah. Yes. You know what? I like that you said that too, because that's just like those little person. Okay, so for example, my oldest, he's more of a people person. He's outgoing, whereas my daughter can be more introverted, which is a middle one.
Right.
Now, my son can be like the class clown or messing around, but he's very sociable. So at times I'm telling him, I say, hey, you got to be serious, man. Like you have to pick your moments. But then I remember when I was a kid, I would do the same thing. So as much as I'm talking to him, I'm talking to myself and say, okay, now I know my mother would have went through in that way. So it's good. It's interesting to see that when the kids are just like these habits that you want to correct for them, so to speak, sometimes. So it's fascinating, actually.
Yeah. It's like a study on just yourself the whole time, right? Like it's kind of
Absolutely.
like, oh, okay. And I guess also in that is the idea that maybe certain things would have been said to you at that point, and you sort of go, hey, no wonder that didn't work. That actually hurt my heart, or that was like a negative thing, as opposed to now let me check my wording for how to make it like, hey, mister, I see you, and this is how we can go. What do you think about that?
That's a very important. That's actually one thing I'm always mindful of, because the thing about it is most people spend the rest of their lives getting over their childhood. So if you say a particular thing to a kid in a certain way, especially their temperament, and they take it the wrong way, might be an agreement that they think about themselves, and that could be a negative agreement, and their whole life can change in that moment. So you have to be very careful how you approach it. I'm not saying to walk on eggshells or anything like that.
You got to be real.
You expose yourself, you have to be real, but there's certain things like, okay, so my mother, dad, they were very straightforward.
Right.
My dad's not here anymore, but my mom's always straight to the cut. Like it was no filter on anything. And she told me. And at the end of the day, that seemed rough. Like by that standard, would have been rough right now.
Right.
But like I won't necessarily talk to my kids the same way. I think about it, and if I'm really angry, I'll take a moment, calm down, and say, it wasn't really worth it, because I don't want to say something in that quick moment of anger that can really create a lasting image. I don't want that.
Yeah. That's so powerful. That really is the power of this doing it differently, is those awarenesses. And I think what you've mentioned too, which I was not good at, was this idea that, mum's just gonna take a pause. I don't like what's coming out my mouth right now. I'm on a higher energy that it isn't right. Give me a minute, so that they already right away don't feel it's on them, right? And you're really demonstrating, hey, we can all take a pause. We can just say, hang on, I need to regroup, or I need to think, you know what, I'm super tired, I'm very stressed. We're not dealing with that today. Let me come back with you tomorrow. Like give yourself permission.
Absolutely.
That being human.
Absolutely. And that's the biggest lesson as any parent, anyone watching, any parent, you have to forgive yourself for those moments too. You have to, it's a challenge. It's the biggest job in the world, so to speak. Not even the biggest, better word would be the most important, most critical, because every one of us became a product of our parents and so forth, and we're continuing the legacy. So it's very critical.
Right. So staying with that, how do you, one, you mentioned forgiveness, which is like huge, but how have you managed to do that for yourself? And then how do you, when you mess up, how do you make it right with your kids? Like, how does that work for you?
So that took a while to learn, because and the thing is, you love your kids to pieces, and sometimes
Yeah.
you have to be strict, or you have to say what you have to say. And sometimes, or even as you discipline them, and yes, they may be in the wrong, but feel that um any parent feels sad after a while, or most
Yeah, it
parents
doesn't feel.
feel
Yeah, I
sad
think
after
so.
when
You
you
don't. It doesn't feel
discipline them.
good. You don't come away
Yeah, it
going,
doesn't feel
"Ha,
good,
did
because at
that."
the end of the day, this is a being that's looking up to you for everything. You're guiding them, and they love you unconditionally. You
Yes.
know,
Yeah.
until they realize they're teenagers or whatever, they probably
Yeah. Yeah.
love you
Don't
for
worry. You
video
stay in
games
your
and whatever.
bubble,
Yeah,
Teronie. That's
right, right,
perfect.
right,
Yeah.
right, right,
Yeah. They love
right,
you unconditionally.
right. But yeah. So you have to realize, like, oh man, you're teaching them, though, you're guiding them, but sometimes it hurts that way. So what I realized, let's say if I yell after kids, or even the examples when I did yell after them, I think back and analyze it, like, let's say later on when they're sleeping, it's okay, could I have communicated this a bit better? Was I wrong in the moment? I analyze it, and then if I am completely wrong or was wrong, I explain it on the next day, or when the time
Yeah.
comes up, so it doesn't seem like it's scripted. I explain them, say this was the reason why this happened, but also as I'm explaining, I'm not doing it in a way that I'm necessarily blaming them for that.
So
Okay, so
important.
I guess the best way to say it, let's say the other day, I was calling my son. He was downstairs. I'm calling my son, and he wasn't. I'm yelling now. Hey, what's going on? But he didn't hear me because he's washing clothes, and this is something that I wanted him to do from a long time ago. So he's finally doing it. He comes upstairs, and before he even said anything, I'm already yelling, "Hey, don't you hear me? This and that." And then he told me, and I was like, "Oh man, okay." And the point that I was making is that I apologized, but then immediately I was saying that sometimes I call you, you don't listen, and but then there in that same moment I'm saying you don't listen. It's like I'm punishing him again, or I keep reminding him of what he's doing. So I'm trying to
Yes.
create
God.
this. So I make sure I say, you know what, I apologize for that too, because at the end of the day, this is a situation where it's a area of improvement, and Daddy's going to work on his communication as well as. But when I do call, you come,
Yes.
if you hear me. So I
Yeah.
have to just be mindful in that, especially as they're getting older, because I don't want to create any sort of complex within them,
Right.
or I don't want them their memories of Daddy to be always yelling or anything. And not that I'm yelling a lot, but you know how it
Yeah,
is.
oh, I
You
totally.
you have to.
Hey, I'm a huge yeller. I'm a huge,
Hey,
way better. But I definitely started with a trigger, and it'd be like ah, and then
yes,
and afterwards, I would actually physically feel exhausted and think, what the hell? There's this little person, even
yes,
a bigger person,
yeah,
like eye to eye, human to human, heart to heart. That I
yes,
wouldn't do that to anybody else. So
no,
that
no,
corrects you too, right? You wouldn't. I
yeah,
don't think your wife would respond nicely if you spoke to her that way, right?
exactly,
So that
exactly.
keeps us on track of like,
You know,
maybe not.
and funny thing too is, just as a sidebar, it's funny too because even as you're yelling at the kids and you don't like that situation, it's always kind of a comical when you see another parent doing the same thing to their kids, because you could laugh because, like, yeah, I've been there for it, and it's kind of funny in that situation. But then
Yeah.
obviously they're not in that moment, so I always kind of think about that too.
Yeah, yeah, and I think we are all so much more alike than not because of
Oh, for
how
sure.
And I actually find it harder to be with people who say, "Oh, everything is wonderful, my kids are beautiful,
No,
everything." I'm like,
no, not
really?
real.
Like every day? Every day?
No,
Do they never bother you at all? Yeah, it doesn't feel realistic, and then that's more uncovering on our own self and our ego, right? Of what we want to put
absolutely,
out there.
absolutely, absolutely. That's definitely true.
That's great. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, how open do you think you are in allowing each one of them, of the three, to be really who they are?
Very open. The thing about it, right? Or whatever rules we had as a parent is different. Their times are different than our times, and even tomorrow is different than today, and so forth. So, however they want to be, I'm completely open. Like, you as a parent, you may have certain preferences or anything like that, but at the end of the day, it's their life. I can only guide you to a certain point, and whatever you want to do.
Yeah. Oh, Is that me or is that you?
It's up to you.
Oh, you're back. We lost you a minute there.
Hello?
Oh,
Hey, there you go.
yeah, there you go. I don't know. Okay.
Right. So I'm comfortable with who they are. So at the end of the day, it's our lifestyles are different than how my life was different than their life.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing I want them to realize is that you can come to me for anything. If you feel a certain way, you have any dilemmas, or this is how you want to do business. My biggest qualm is as long as it doesn't hurt anyone else,
Yeah.
and you have integrity within yourself. This goes with who you are. The integrity with your own personality of
Yes.
who you want to be. Then that's fine, and you can do whatever you want. And at the end of the day, that's what it is. Because
Yeah.
I don't want to force my belief or thinking upon them. You have to come up and do that.
Yeah. I hugely believe that. I really do. I think, and it's hard to do, especially when they're doing maybe something that you're like, "Ooh, I wouldn't suggest that," or "That's not great." But it's
Right.
like if we really lean back and see that, this is their journey. Like, who am I to decide with my thoughts, my baggage, my whatever, that I know better than this? Now, for certain things, I know the stove's hot. I know you don't run in front of
Right.
a car. I know, but like you're talking about integrity and things, those are beautiful traits that we then demonstrate to them. And that's a core thing, right? As opposed
Right.
to, and what they do with that
Right.
is,
Right.
on their
That's
journey.
right. That's right. And you got to be careful because it's so easy as a parent because you're used to guiding them or, coaching them along or
Yeah.
raising them that it's easy to say, okay, don't do this, don't do that. Because it's just easier.
Oh,
But
so
I
much
remember,
easier.
they have so many ways. My daughter always proves that to me. Funny enough, it's like she's on a computer and I'm messing around. Like, okay, for example, I was telling her to do her report when she was in online school.
Right.
Telling her to do her report, make sure she types it out, and then she has her microphone with her. I'm like, what are you doing? So after a couple of days of this, and say, you need to type this out. You need to type this out. So one day I sat with her, and she said, look, Daddy, just pressed it. She pressed the button. She's talking. I'm like, are you kidding me? I didn't know you could do that. So I'm sitting there getting pissed off that she's not right, and she's found a smarter way to do it.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh, which helps me with when I'm doing my writing, because sometimes when the thoughts are in there, I'm just talking in there. So it's always anything that your kids can kind of show you.
Absolutely. That's sort of a lesson in everything, isn't it? That whole thing that they are super wise and like their
Absolutely.
learnings about the world around them and about, even as something as fairly simple as online school, they just,
Yes.
we can really learn so much that you'll be like, oh,
Oh,
I
for
never
sure.
knew. Yeah.
Absolutely. They're wise beyond years. Like
Yeah.
kids, they don't have that preconditioned filter that we grow up with.
Right. So, if I may ask, how do you and your wife handle your differences in parenting the three, or do you feel like you're kind of mostly on the same page?
Our communication is great when it comes to our kids, but we are on a different page sometimes with the parenting. Whereas um, she and mothers who especially are around the kids a lot um, is that deserve awards because that's like 20 jobs in one.
Yeah.
For me, with me going out working and sometimes traveling for work, everything, it's I can have the luxury of sometimes being away to take care of that, even though I am out and on the go,
Right.
handling business and dealing with clients. I am on the go, but at the same time, she's 24/7,
Yeah.
or less when she's sleeping. Even when she's sleeping,
Still
she's
got
not
that
fully
brain
sleeping
on
because
there.
she's worried
Yeah.
about the 3-year old. So it's she's more let me see. I don't want to say hands-on, but there's a better word for it. She's more aware pretty much of everything because she's around them in that way,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Whereas I'm kind of just, okay, let's see what happens.
Right.
So if she wants something to be done, she'll suggest it in a certain way. And then maybe I won't do it, but then
Right.
sometimes I do. but she has her style, I have mine, and then we talk about it sometimes when she does want me to do something and I don't want to do it. Then we communicate. She
Beautiful.
explains to me why, and I say,
Yeah.
oh, okay, I never seen it that way. Okay, I'll consider it, or I might just do it.
Right.
So our styles are different, but it's cohesive.
Yeah,
Because
I love
at the
it.
end of the day, we want to make sure that we are both. Our kids are watching us,
Yeah.
so based on the relationships that they eventually will have, they see how to communicate with each other.
Yeah.
You don't have to argue. And I always believe the mantra, the happy wife, happy life.
It's a good one to keep. Yeah.
Absolutely. This is
Yeah.
the person that you're around all the time.
Yeah.
This is 90% that can create 90% of your misery or happiness. You should have that cohesive relationship. And then even with your kids, for the short period that you're with them, you should have that good relationship.
Yeah,
At least
I
try
agree. I agree. And I noticed with my husband and I have been married for ever. And can't even do the math at the moment. But I don't know if I can count that high. But we've have very different parenting styles, but it sounds very similar, that the core of what we really believe and what we really want in life with our children, with our partners, that's the same. Right? How we get there is very different. Very different, right? How we approach things. And I think that's actually okay. It's actually okay. It's a way for kids to know we're all different, but we can, figure things out. Like certain things he'll do that would drive me crazy. And I think, this is awful. No, you can't do this with the children, or blah, blah, blah. And then you step back and you go, there's lessons in there, actually.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And the kids, they know. First, we know really easy. They know who to go to, depending on what their needs are. That's like almost from little, right?
Yeah.
And but they also learn that, hey, we're all different, but it's actually okay. We can gain these skills from my dad, and these from my mom, these from my grandparents. It's okay.
That's true. Yes. They know exactly who to go to.
Yeah.
That's so true.
Wonderful. So let's finish. I've got a couple last questions. I didn't want to keep you too long, Tony, but what do you think has been the hardest part of being a father?
The hardest, most challenging part is to make sure that I'm setting a good example. Okay. So not only so much a good example that my integrity with them is intact, that I'm keeping my word with them. So I know I can't do everything with them, but at the same time, if I say I'm going to do it, you're going to see me. I'm at least going to try. Right. I'm not going to say do as I say, not as I do. Right. If I'm telling you to, let's say, like for example, books I'm always reading, I love and everything. So sometimes my kids don't want to. Right. And I'm not going to force them. But at the same time, it's more effective if they see me doing it. Yeah. And they have their other things that they read, but it's the main thing of being there for them, knowing that I can be amongst them in their life. So it's a challenge in the sense that I have to make sure that I'm keeping that quality, that standard, so to speak, of keeping my integrity. Because I don't want them to say, daddy's word is garbage, or I don't want them to think that.
Believe him, yeah.
Yeah. And, and that's the very least I can do. There's a lot of different examples, but every time, I'm learning too. The thing about our kids is they're growing up, they're watching us grow up. Yeah, we're so different from each kid. So I just want to make sure my integrity is intact, that when they think about me, say, you know what? Yeah, he did everything he needed to do.
Lovely. Great. And can you think of what advice would have helped you when you held your first baby, your first boy there, in your arms? What sort of advice would you give the young Teronie as he embarked on fatherhood?
That things generally work its way out. And if it doesn't, you'll figure it out. Take it a day at a time and be patient. And also, most importantly, just, so to speak, the stop and smell the roses. Like take the time to take those little adventures, do these different things, but enjoy the moment, the quality time. That's what I would say, for my young self.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you so much, Teronie. Thank you very much for being here and sharing your journey and so much wisdom for our viewers and for me too. So thank you so very
No, I
much.
appreciate it. Thank you very much for having me. I love it.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. And so, if you're watching this, please, or listening to this, please subscribe, please share. And I look forward to sort of seeing where we will go with this. And I will have all the links for how you can reach out to Teronie and his bio and all that kind of thing underneath the videos and the podcast. So you'll be able to reach out to him too. Thank you.
Take care.